All this stuff with Captain Connor. So we're in an odd spot. The Captain Connor plot twist. I've actually enjoyed it, even though it's an odd one. I really like when Mishima has these super weird plot lines that you had like are so few commented on in verse that it just leaves the reader in the dark, I think, way more than a lot of the other stuff what's going on. Like, you know, the stuff between, like, Ziggy and Shiki, what's going on with the Cat Leaper, the different universes, timelines. Like, stuff like that, you can see kind of, like, moving in a much more grand scheme, where stuff like this is obviously, like, its own kind of question mark. And, you know, a very near and dear one to my heart that I will give an example is, and I won't go much into it, is everything around Mystigan. If you read or watch Fairy Tail blindly, and before you get up until where stuff with Mystigan is being explained, you are so confused about Mystigan, it's so weird, and it's just like, this is one of those things where it's like, you're just not really too sure, because there's just so little to kind of like actually wrap your head around to form this idea. And that's what the Captain Connor thing reminds me a lot of, because I get like the only thing we really have towards like Captain Connor stuff is what we do know about like time and stuff, in terms of even when Rebecca or somebody alters events so something changes in the timeline, time will attempt to nudge stuff back until it's somewhat in the right path. So like, say, you know, if you were supposed to drop a plate and break it, you know, time travel fixed it. Maybe instead somebody else will drop the plate a different, a couple days later in a different fashion or something. There's like a ways that time is trying to correct itself, almost this Final Destination-esque way. I mean, I guess not really. There's not like 80 million freaking extra fallovers and traps that, you know, it's gonna lead up to Wise losing his arm again. Well, I assume that's gonna happen, because if certain things in time are supposed to happen, and we see the old man Wise with one robotic arm, I would assume that Wise is gonna get his arm cut off at some point in the future. That would actually be really funny if it's just like there's multiple arcs where he loses an arm, but it's like Rebecca has had to time travel and fix it multiple times. I think that'd be pretty funny. But now they're getting ready to go to this Lendard planet. They have Captain Connor, who's like saying, you know, pretty much like, he barely got away from there, it's dangerous, they shouldn't go there. You know, they're fine with that. Like, this is post-time skip, we still don't know entirely what the main cast is capable of. And obviously that's gonna come back as like near the end of this chapter to kind of like, again, keep me a little confused around that. But when they're talking to Captain Connor, he's like saying like, I can't really do that, I don't want to go back to this, and they're like, you're fine, you can leave if you want to. And I like that response. They're not being mean or anything. They're like, hey, you don't have to be here. Like, if you don't want to go back to there, you can leave. We're gonna still go there. We've got something, we've got to take care of. We've got a job, and you're not obligated to partake, but you can stay if you want. Don't want to. Doors that way. Have fun. You'd probably get lost in space again, which would be pretty funny. I like this idea of Captain Connor getting lost in space anytime that he's not in like an actual competent ship. Like, if you put him in like a small ship, he'd probably get lost again, or at least get shipwrecked. I don't really know. We're gonna find out more about this dude. I still really like the idea that he's kind of like Jango Fett, where he is a clone of some famous space pilot, and this way they can always have this like masterclass space pilot in scenarios. It's like, oh, well, he was the best, so we'll just clone him in his prime and put him in different areas, so we always have this major like skilled pilot to help you get around space. It also makes sense why he would know so much about things like way later in the series, like shortcuts through areas of the cosmos. But they're getting all set up. We have them all go back to Blue Garden. I am slightly agitated still with the fact that Rebecca kind of gained that, like, pretty much skipped over all of her personal stuff with, like, gaining her Beekeeper stuff in the background or the time skip. It's not important. It's not something major, but it's like that to see her, like, now be, obviously really, really noticed in a crowd as, like, now she's famous. She's got, like, 4 million or whatever subs. It's still cool, but, like, I would have liked to see that rise as, like, the story was going. Like, by the end of the series, she is a good, she's, a famous Beekeeper. It's not something that ruins the story, but it makes me wonder, like, what's her thing then? Like, she doesn't have her own personal thing going on that you can get invested in. And like the stuff with her B cube, because I want to mention this because it is something that I have wanted to talk about. But again, I do want to clarify, it's not something that is that important to the story. It's not something that ruins Rebecca's character, does anything majorly negative. It's just something that I wish was left over. So it's like maybe after each arc we see it a little bit higher up, and then by the end of the series, Rebecca is this famous B-cuber. I like the idea of that. I'm not against this, but it makes me wonder, like, is Mishima going to introduce her, or going to introduce a new thing for her? Because we don't really know if Eden Zero, like, where it's at completion-wise. I do think that we're probably more than halfway over, I would bet. But maybe Mishima wanted to close out that because, you know, she's not going to need one in the later portions of the story, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with that idea. I would have personally liked it more, though, again, if it was something that we saw at the very end, to see her accomplished at the end of the story instead of already now. But then they bring up another really good plot point, though, that I was happy to see, is they could have went to Xiaomei and found out where Ziggy is, which is very true, because obviously outside of the result of battles, Xiaomei knows pretty much everything, because she, you know, is like a weird meta character. But Hermit explains, like, she can't really, like, they can't just go there because the planet moves around. And a planet that moves around that also exists outside of time, because, you know, essentially going to her planet, it's like time stop. You know, the time's not going to move differently the second you go here. And which would mean that she could move around at any point whatsoever. Like, what could be like her being like, you know, I'm going to move tomorrow, for her is literally now. Just is the difference in, like, how the weird time on this planet works. So finding it, I would assume, unless you have something very specific, like the God Eye ability, or if Xiaomei wants to bring you over, or maybe, like, just happenstance and luck is on your side, you're probably not going to find her. At the end of the chapter, though, there was a really interesting aspect, because we found out a little first about Captain Connor. Captain Connor is, like, looking for his wife, who has his daughter. He hasn't seen her, and he wants to find her. Shiki's response to that, though, was really good, because we do see that kind of, like, very tearful, sobbing Shiki. And there's, like, a funny part where he says, like, I'll be your daughter instead, and, you know, you can be my dad to make you feel better. Like, that was funny, but I like that we did get to see some of Shiki in this post-time skip setup. Like, we obviously, like, he's still Shiki, but I think we personally needed to see something like this, where we see that he's still, even though he's got he's grown older, he's still, like, that same guy in there. Like, he's still somebody that, you know, you're gonna recognize as Shiki Granbell. Because I feel like there were some people that thought he was gonna be this almost, like, kind of like older Ichigo type, where he's just gonna always have that kind of, like, calm, collected, and cool-headed look to him, which, I mean, it is neat, but it would have felt weird with Shiki, given, like, you know, to do such a drastic change to his character. I like this. I like this good balance of it, because it does feel, you know, it does feel more in line with this character. And I wouldn't have really liked it if Mishima changed him so much that, again, he felt like somebody entirely different. But at the later points of the chapter, it seems that Feather is now touched down onto Blue Garden. She's got some of her, like, minions, and, like, she's got like some at least that aren't mass nameless fodder. I'm guessing these two random dudes are going to have names, like these guys with wings. But I assume that all of her people are going to not be that big of an issue. Her power doesn't even seem to be like a fighting type one, unless hers is somewhat different than Noah's. Because Noah reveals that she has the same ether gear as him. So if she has the God Eye thing, how is she going to use it in combat? Because here's the thing right now. I assume that out of the main cast, the only person that is on level with one of the Interstellar or Galactica is Shiki. Like, one for one, I think it's safe to assume, as one of the Galactica now, Shiki is on level with them. So for Feather, he would be somebody that can match her, I would assume. Again, the other characters, though, we don't really know. I would bet that out of those other 6, Jin is still the strongest. I feel like that would just make sense. But we don't really know where these other 6 stand in terms of strength. But here's the fact. 1, there's 6 of them. 2, they all have pretty good abilities. 3, there's still Eden Zero members nearby. 4, the only people outside of nameless masked fodder that Feather has are these 2 other guys. And they both look like barely named goons. Like, these guys are in in the line right between I'm just a background goof and I have a name. So we'll see if they end up having anything. I don't imagine even if they have names, they're going to be anything other than measuring stick characters. We just got the time skip. We haven't seen really what any of the cast can do. So I don't see this as like a threat level. I think this is a really weird situation because the only way I could see Feather's group having any way of an advantage, at least right here, unless another Galactica member shows up or somebody else of significance shows up, is sheer numbers. Or if like the main cast is like pretty much has to pull back because of like civilians in danger or something, and maybe it's not going to be a fight. It's more going to be like them escaping custody because they don't want to have like a big commotion. Like there's some weird stuff right now with this kind of scenario that I definitely want to see played out, but I don't think it's not like I don't personally think there's any real tension in this spot, but I don't think it's supposed to be that way. And it's more of like, I don't think they're going to get caught here. I don't think they're going to be in trouble here. But how is the response going to be? What is the Eden Zero, at least for the most part, the bulk of their fighters going to really do once, you know, they're going to be faced with opposition? So, again, good chapter. Nothing too crazy. I felt like there was some stuff, though, that was enjoyable to be, you know, put out in the series. Stuff with Connor, stuff with, like, Shiki's response to that, the kind of, like, stuff like answering Xiao Mei. And then I wanted to talk about the stuff with Rebecca and her Beekeeper career, because I felt like that was a plot point that we could have got a lot more mileage out of. And that way, like, to see it in a longer sense could have really had more of an emotional impact when Rebecca achieved it. I just want to mention one last thing before I end it, because, like, it's just in understanding what I mean. Think of, like, how you, like, you know, anybody listening, how they felt when it's like time skip happened. We found out Rebecca's channel has millions of subscribers now. It was more, at least to me, and I would like to know what other people thought. It was more like, cool, rather than if, like, end of series, we're seeing the you know, the characters in their pretty much peak of their designs and of their journeys and stuff, and then be like, Rebecca, millions and millions of views, famous now, achieved her dreams and her goals. It would feel way more satisfactory. Because now I feel like outside of finding Mother for the sake of finding Mother and stuff in the plot, I don't really know what that does for Rebecca's side of things, other than it's like, cool, like a famous person gets more famous. I really like the idea that, like, Rebecca would pretty much be able to achieve that, like, once they find Mother. Like, maybe Mother would be the thing to, like, rocket her career, and then it's just, like, success after that. I don't know. That's just something that I've been bothered a little bit about, but as I mentioned, it's not a big deal. It's just something that I wanted to discuss a little bit before we ended up getting into more important plot points to come. But anyway, other than that, though, comment below, thumbs up the video, but friend, like button, subscribe button, check out my other videos. But that, appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.